Hi, everybody. Welcome back to First Chapter Friday. This month we are going to be reading Ferris by Kate DiCamillo. And the reason I picked this one is Kate DiCamillo has a lot of other really good books. She wrote Because of Winn-Dixie, Flora and Ulysses, and also The Tale of Despero. And I read all three of the other ones and I thoroughly enjoyed them. So this is one of her newest. I figured I'd give it a shot. All right, again, this one is Ferris by Kate DiCamillo. All right, and chapter one, just entitled One with a Ferris Wheel. So I wonder if that has something to do with the title. All right, so it was summer before Emma Phineas Wilkie, who everyone called Ferris, went into the fifth grade. It was the summer that the ghost appeared to Therese, the summer that Ferris's sister, Pinky Wilkie, devoted herself to becoming an outlaw, and the summer that Uncle Ted left Aunt Shirley and moved into the Wilkie basement to paint a history of the world. It was the summer that Ferris's best friend, Billy Jackson, played a song called Mysterious Barricades over and over again on the piano. Billy Jackson loved music. The very first sentence he had ever spoken to Ferris was, I hear piano music in my head all the time, and I wonder, would it be all right if I held onto your hand? They were standing in Mrs. Bleeker's kindergarten classroom. Squares of sunlight were shining on the wood floors, and Ferris gave her hand to Billy Jackson while he continued to explain to her about the piano music in his head. Billy's hand was sweating. His glasses were attached to his head with a strap, and Ferris knew almost immediately, from that very first moment, that she didn't want to ever lose hold of Billy Jackson. She said, There's a piano at our house. You can come over and play it whenever you want. It was a big old house, the house where Ferris lived. Ferris had her own room. So did Pinky, and so did Ferris's parents. Cherise, Ferris's grandmother, had her own room too. That was where the ghost showed up, at the threshold of Cherise's room. Darling, Cherise said to Ferris, this ghost. She just stands there in the doorway and stares at me with the most mournful expression. What does she look like? Said Ferris, besides mournful. Oh, she's wearing a long dress. She has a handkerchief in her hand and she wrings and squeezes it. Clearly, she's in despair over something. She's very unhappy, darling. Are there happy ghosts? Said Ferris. I would like you to know that Boomer sees her too, in case you are inclined to doubt my sanity. Boomer was the dog. He was part sheepdog and part German shepherd, and also, according to Ferris's father, part woolly mammoth. No one was sure really what kind of dog Boomer was, only that he was enormous and furry. Boomer refuses to enter the room if he sees her standing there, said Cherise. He's a very perceptive dog. But why is the ghost here? Asked Ferris. She was sitting in the window seat of Cherise's room, looking out into the backyard. Ferris figured that she had spent more than half of her time on earth in Cherise's room, talking to her grandmother, listening to her, playing gin rummy with her, and reading to her from the Bible, and also from a battered paperback of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. I mean, said Ferris, what do you think the ghost wants? I have absolutely no idea, said Cherise. I'm utterly baffled by all of it, darling. Boomer was asleep on the rose-patterned carpet by Cherise's bed. He was moving his paws, breathing heavily, dreaming of chasing something. The one time Boomer actually managed to catch something, a baby squirrel, he dropped it immediately and crept into the house with his tail between his legs, devastated by shame and regret. He was a gentle soul. That was what Cherise said about Boomer. He's a gentle soul. Are you afraid of her? Ferris said. Are you afraid of the ghost? When you've lived as long as I have, said Cherise, who was 73 years old, You are not afraid of ghosts. Well, what are you afraid of then? Said Ferris. Indignities, said Charisse. I don't understand, said Ferris. Well, isn't that wonderful, said Charisse. I'm so pleased that you don't understand. It was late afternoon and Charisse was in bed. Why are you still in bed? I don't feel well, darling. And that's all I want to say about that. I would ask you not to question me to death, as is your wont. Ferris was Charisse's favorite person on the whole planet. No one denied it. Not Charisse, not Ferris, not anybody in the whole household. Charisse was the person who had caught Ferris when she entered the world. Literally caught her. Charisse had been on her knees in the dirt of the fairground, and she had been the one who had seen Ferris first. She had recognized her at first sight. Welcome, darling. That was what she had said to Ferris, and Ferris swore that she could remember it. Entering into this world, seeing the blue sky, seeing Charisse's face smiling down at her. It's a love story, Cerise said whenever she told the story of Ferris being born. But then, every story is a love story, or every good story is a love story. You can't possibly remember it, said Ferris's mother that evening. I barely remember it. You know what your grandmother does? She dramatizes everything. No, she romanticizes everything. Going into labor on a patch of dirt at a fairground is not romantic. I can tell you that much. Hand me a sponge, will you? Ferris and her mother were at the kitchen table. Her mother was pasting green stamps into the S&H Green Stamps book. She was working on filling enough books to get a toaster oven. Ferris's mother was practical. She was a pragmatist. She taught high school math. Attempting to teach math to a room full of teenagers on a daily basis leaves no room for romantic notions. Her mother often said, I'm a pragmatist through and through. Was Ferris a pragmatist or a romantic? She didn't know. But sometimes, right before she fell asleep, she saw blue sky. The blue sky that she remembered from being born. And she saw Cherise smiling at her, her face lit up and beautiful. Ferris believed that she'd recognize Cherise as soon as she had laid eyes on her, just the same way she recognized Billy Jackson from the first day she took his hand. Every story is a love story, Ferris said out loud to herself that night when she was in bed. The windows in her room were open. The crickets were singing softly. Boomer had thrown himself across her feet and he was snoring. It was hot having a woolly mammoth draped over her feet, but Ferris was worried about Charisse not feeling well. And she was worried about that ghost. What did she want? Why was she only appearing to Charisse? And so Ferris was grateful to have Boomer there, anchoring her to this bed, the house, the world. I am 10 years old, Ferris said into the darkness. 10 seemed like a significant number of years. 10 seemed like the age when Ferris might start to understand some things. I am 10 years old, and every story is a love story. Above her, above the house, the stars were shining, wheeling their way across the sky. Boomer snorted. The crickets sang. It sounded like maybe the stars were singing too. Ferris closed her eyes. She listened. Every story is a love story. The whole world seemed to be singing. Every good story is a love story. And that's the end of chapter 1 of Ferris by Kate DiCamillo. Now, I know with all of her other ones, I got sucked right in and love the rest of the story. So I have a feeling this one's going to be exactly the same. I don't know about you. I'm a little curious what's about to happen on the next page. So if you do like this, we do have it here at the library. And thank you so much for hanging with me and reading with me again this month. Thanks. I'll see you later. Bye.